my name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. Welcome to the second Casio Edifice Showdown. This is a recurring series on the channel where I put two very cool Casio Edifice watches against one another in a number of categories. The winner of the showdown lives on to reign as the champion in the next round, and the loser is sold from the collection. Today, we have the reigning champion from the first challenge, the EFV-100D, and a new challenger, the EFR-S108D. Now, in the last challenge, the EFV-100D won out ever so slightly, in part due to its smaller size. Now, many of you pointed out that I should check out the EFR-S108D. It was very similar to the previous challenger, except it was slightly smaller, which would give a good fight for the current champion. Now, this watch was a bit hard to track down, but I finally got one. The reviews of both these watches are available in my channel, and should be popping up in the upper right corner of the screen now, so check them out if you want the full details. Today we will just be comparing the two and not really going into a full review. So the way this will work is we will judge both watches by each category. The winner will get a star, or in the case of a tie, no stars will be awarded. The watch with the most stars at the end will be crowned the champion. Before we begin, I want to thank you guys for subscribing to the channel. My views from subscribers have slowly crept up to a whopping 6%. So if you're enjoying the content of this channel and you haven't yet subscribed, I would love if you would do so. Thank you so much. Now the first category is case. Now both of these cases are a combination of high polish and brushed surfaces, and they're both very well executed, especially at these price points. You can see that chamfered edge there, that's high polish. It's really well done, it's really well defined, and there's just kind of a lot going on in these cases. They're very visually interesting. However, I do really like this Challenger case. There's really good mixture, again, of brushing and high polishing, and just the kind of angular surfaces and this octagonal bezel. It's very interesting. There were screws on the old Challenger that I didn't really like, and there are screws on this case, but they kind of tuck them under the bezel. And overall, this is just a very visually interesting case. It's also extremely thin, which makes it very comfortable to wear. And unlike the old Challenger, the lugs do bend down more. The old Challenger had straighter lugs. So overall, I am actually going to give the star to the Challenger for the case. So the next category is crystal, and this is kind of a no-brainer. The Challenger has a sapphire crystal, which is going to be much more scratch resistant and hold up way better over time. The Champion just has a mineral crystal. So in this case, I'm going to have to give the star to the Challenger. So the Challenger is off to an early lead, 2 stars to 0. Will our champion be able to pull back? Let's check out the dial. So in the first challenge I mentioned, I really like this dial. It appears black in certain lighting conditions, but you do see it has a gray sunburst effect that's present in brighter lighting conditions, and I just find it very dynamic and very interesting. Now the Challenger, very similar to the old Challenger, has a dial that also appears black, but in the right lighting conditions, you'll see it actually has like a wood grain finish, which is also very visually interesting. However, I'm just a sucker for that sunburst on the Champion's dial, so I'm gonna have to go ahead and give the star to the Champion for this category. So the next category is handset, and I love the handset on the Champion. First of all, they're high polish and they're gabled, so you can see that they will catch light on one side or the other, which I just really enjoy. It adds a lot of visual interest to the hands of the watch. And then they're plenty long. That minute hand is going all the way out to the chapter ring, and then the hour hand has this playful arrow. I really like how they did that with this watch. And then the second hand has that orange tip. I also enjoy that. It matches the water resistant 100 meter on the dial. Overall, a very pleasing handset on the Champion. Now the Challenger has a good handset as well. They're plenty long, and you can see the back end of them are actually gabled. However, they transition into an all-white finish filled with lume, and that makes them very legible against the dial. And then with the second hand, they went with this gold second hand. I have 2 complaints about this handset. The gold second hand sometimes gets a little bit lost in depending on the lighting. And then while I appreciate the high legibility of the white tipped hands here, I kind of wish they matched with the stainless steel finishing to the indices. There's just something about the mismatch that I don't really enjoy. I like more cohesion, but I do see why they went with this handset. I think it is highly legible. However, for my money, I'm going to give the star to the Champion. So the next category is indices, and actually the indices on this watch are basically exactly the same. They're white and lume in the middle and then high polished around the edges. They do have some nice angles to them so they catch light on different surfaces. The one difference is the indices on the Challenger are actually cut into the chapter ring, which is a detail I really like. However, since they're basically the same, I'm going to give them a tie for this category. And in a similar vein to the indices, the lume on these watches is not that impressive. It's one of the major weak points. It's there, but it's not very bright, it's not very responsive, and it doesn't hold a charge very long. So for the lume, I went ahead and gave it a tie as well. No stars awarded for lume for either of these watches. So next up we have the bracelets, and the bracelets are very similar. The Casio Edifice bracelets, I think they're fine for their purpose. They're a little bit jingly. They do have hollow end links. You do have just a double push to point with a pressed metal clasp, but at the price point, I think you're getting actually a pretty good serviceable bracelet. I like wearing these on the bracelets. The one thing I don't like about the Challenger is the mid link is high polish. It's a little bit too blingy for me. I like bracelets when it is completely all brushed. And you'll see on the Challenger, the bracelet is a lot more just brushed. It's mostly all brushed with some hints of high polish, and it's just very well integrated into the case of the watch. It kind of comes down and tapers all the way down to the clasp. I just really like how they executed this bracelet, and overall I like this bracelet a lot more than the Champion's bracelet, and I'm going to give the star to the Challenger in this case. So if you've been keeping score at home, the Challenger has pulled ahead with 3 stars, the Champion only 2 stars as we move into this movement category. Now, the movements in these watches are very similar. They're quartz movements. They're accurate to about plus or minus 20 seconds a month, and they have 3-year battery life, and they both feature the date. However, I have made one small observation with my time with these two watches. The tick on the second hand is much more audible on the Champion. The Challenger's tick, while you can hear it if you hold it all the way up to your ear, is basically silent. And that is something I actually really like, is a quiet quartz movement. So I went ahead and gave the star to the Challenger in this case. So next up is water resistance. Now we have a tie here. They're both 100 meters of water resistance. However, the Champion actually does feature a screw down crown. So while you don't need a screw down crown to ensure the water resistance, having the crown screwed down does ensure against an accidental opening of the crown if you're underwater or in some sort of water situation, which would then flood the watch. So it's that extra level of kind of security against water intrusion on the watch. So in that case, I did give the star to the Champion as it features that screw down crown. So the last category is overall, where I give a star to my overall favorite. And it was really hard in this case. I like both of these watches a lot. However, at the end of the day, I just found myself a little bit more drawn to the Champion. And I think that has something to do with the dial. The dial on the Challenger is very subdued, and I just love the sunburst, the kind of the gray sunburst of the Champion. It's just kind of cool to see throughout the day. That being said, I am very torn between these two watches, but I think for the sake of the video, I have to give a star to the Champion in this case. So with the star in the overall category for the Champion, where does this leave us? Well, it's actually a tie. Oh no, this happened in the first video too. It's 4-4. So I'm going to show you a wrist shot of both of these watches, and then I'm going to tell you the caveat that is the tiebreaker in this case. So here is the Champion on my 6 3/4 inch wrist, and this is a 40mm watch, and I think it just fits perfect in this case, and you can kind of see the dynamic dial there in the studio lights. And here is the Challenger, about the same size. It's technically 40mm on that bezel, but it's slightly smaller on the case, but we'll call it a 40mm, and you can see it also wears extremely well. However, there is a caveat on this watch. Now, I think the bracelet is fine, but the way it's designed, it actually has a 16mm opening. So switching out the bracelet for a strap will be almost impossible in this case. So you're going to have to really like how this watch looks on the bracelet. And I think they did an excellent job. It's really well integrated and it's very cohesive. However, you don't have the flexibility to do some of the fun things you can do with the Champion, which I'll show you now. So here is the Champion on a 20mm Barton Silicon Elite, a strap I love. And with that 20mm lug width, you're going to be able to very easily switch out straps on this watch, which over the long term is something that adds a lot of the value to owning a watch. It's really fun to switch straps on a watch. It actually makes it feel like a completely different watch and sometimes can really highlight some of the other features or give it a totally different feel, like it's dressed up or dressed down. So in this case, due to the fact that I can't switch the strap on the Challenger, the tiebreaker is going to be the fact that on this Champion, they went with this standard lug opening in 20 millimeters, which is one of the most popular sizes, which is going to give you a lot of strap changes. So this concludes the second Casio Edifice Showdown, and it was a close one. I think if not for the strange 16 millimeter lug width on the Challenger, it would have dethroned the Champion. However, because it kind of eliminates the ability to change the strap, the Champion eked out its second win and will move on to the next Casio Edifice Showdown. If you have a suggestion for a watch to put the Champion against, please list it below in the comments. Unfortunately for the Challenger, it will be sold from the collection. All right, thank you for watching. As always, if you like the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. My name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches.